with Israel's national baseball team being only one of 6 teams to make it to the Olympics. Can you imagine that? It's like Israel, America, the Dominican Republic, and Japan. I have no idea how Israel got into that group. I've been thinking a lot about baseball these past couple weeks, and so I want to begin my sermon this morning with the words of Ernst Lawrence Thayer's great epic, Casey at the Bat. The poem opens with the outlook being none too bright for the Mudville Nine that day, until miraculously, due to a series of events, Casey gets his turn at the bat. Only instead of striking or hitting at the clear strikes and taking a swing, Casey watches the pitches go by. That ain't my style, Casey says, as the umpire calls strike 1. He sneers as strike 2 passes him by. And so on the 3rd strike, the pitcher then lets go. The air is shattered by Casey's mighty blow. The poem then concludes with these immortal words that no true fan of baseball will ever forget. Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out. How are we supposed to feel listening to that poem? What did the poet want us to think? No doubt there is a range of emotions here. Tortured UGA fans in the room have some Rahmanis for the fans. They certainly know what it's like to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But all of us really know that there's a much more prominent emotion that we're all supposed to feel when we listen to the poem Casey at the Bat. It is, as a rabbi, my favorite German word, if a rabbi is allowed to have a favorite German word. It is the emotion of Schadenfreude, pleasure that comes from the suffering of others. Why? Why would we feel a little bit of Schadenfreude listening to the poem Casey at the Bat? It's because the mighty Casey strikes out not an act of humility, but in an act of arrogance. Not because he tried his best, but because he didn't. Because he didn't think he would need to. And yes, there is something about being human that causes us to rejoice in the downfall of people who are arrogant. Why is it, for example, Judy Lebo being the present exception, so many people don't like Tom Brady? It's not because he isn't arguably the best football player to have ever played football. Come on, we all know he is. We don't like Tom Brady because he knows he's the best player to have ever played the game of football. I'm reminded of what the British Olympic swimmer Adam Peaty once said. He said that human beings like there to be a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Human beings love confidence. We love success. But we also love it when that success is coupled with modesty. Does anyone know how much Warren Buffett is worth? $100.6 billion. Yet what was one of the first things I remember learning about Warren Buffett? Rabbi Lewis no doubt knows this too. That his wife used to play mahjong with the rabbi's wife in Omaha. So in the event that you don't fit the Warren Buffett mold, when you are Casey, if you are arrogant, yeah, people are going to root for you to lose. As an Eagles fan, it was really great when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. As you may recall, I spoke about that from the pulpit proudly at the time. It was a moment when I truly understood how to pray as I got on my hands and knees during that fourth quarter. But I will tell you, it was even sweeter on some ways to watch Tom Brady lose that Super Bowl. No doubt, like Casey, he was crying tears over his underinflated footballs in the locker room. As Jews, there's something inherent that leads us to detest arrogance and to seek role models in people who are not entirely all that arrogant. Sandy Koufax is a living Jewish sports legend. He's the youngest pitcher who ever reached the Sports Hall of Fame. Anyone know where Sandy Koufax is today, though? He's a private citizen. He serves as a member of the advisory board of the baseball assistance team. That's a nonprofit that's dedicated to helping former major leaguers, minor leaguers, and Negro League players through financial and medical difficulties. That's a Jewish role model. Take a look at Israel. Have you ever been to see Ben-Gurion's house in Sde Boker? Or been to the Jabotinsky Museum and seen the model of the apartment that Jabotinsky lived in? These were two of Israel's most successful, longest-serving prime ministers. Neither of them ever lived in a house that was bigger than a two-bedroom apartment. Moses, we read about in this week's parashah, concludes his journey, his Masa, having led the Israelites out of Egypt. He contended with Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the leading ruler of the known world. Only what does the Torah tell us about Moses? V'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od. He may have been great, but he was also humble. He didn't let his success dictate the kind of person that he was going to become. He allowed the person he was to dictate the way he would succeed. That's a Jewish role model. Why this morning did I begin by speaking to you about the joy that comes from triumphing over the arrogant? It's because instead of our parashah, I want to do a little iyun tefillah this morning. I want to talk about one of the prayers in our service we read every Shabbat and don't think all that much about. It's one that you may not have thought that much about, but it is deeply rooted in this idea of how Jews are supposed to abhor arrogance. The prayer is Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, a psalm for Shabbat. And so I want to invite everybody to take out their Sidurim and turn to page 112. How does the psalm begin in English? Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat Tov L'Hodot L'Adonai U'Lezamer Shimcha Elyon. It is good to thank you, Adonai, and to sing your name most high, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. There's a lot of joy at the beginning of the psalm. The speaker is happy, but why? What is it that God makes him happy about? It is, as you see, in the middle, the downfall of the arrogant. In the Hebrew, Ish ba'ar lo yeda uchsil lo yavin et zot. The arrogant can never understand, the fool cannot comprehend this truth. What specifically? That the wicked will flourish like grass and every evildoer blossom, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, will be exalted throughout time. The truth is that God has selflessly created an order to the universe, and that order is that ultimately the good will prosper and the wicked will not succeed, even if they may have it for a moment. Now, whether that's true or not, we can argue about that for a while. The psalm seeks to teach us here an important lesson about what it means to be arrogant. And that is that when you are arrogant and so self-absorbed in yourself, you forget that the only one who truly has a right to be arrogant is who? God. None of us, whether we're Tom Brady or Warren Buffett, has achieved as much as God has. Only is God arrogant? No, of course not. What did Fern sing for us so beautifully this morning? Mashpil ge'im u'magbia shefalim. God lowers people who are arrogant and elevates those who are downtrodden. That's why the mighty Casey strikes out. That's why Tom Brady will lose every now and then a Super Bowl. In our universe, the only one who has a right to be an ish ba'ar, an arrogant person, is the one who made us. Only God chooses a decidedly different path. God does a lot. But God doesn't brag about it all that much, does God? Wasn't our God the first one who said, you know what, no statues of me, please. No pictures. I don't need the publicity. No thank you, God said, it's all good, I'm good. In today's day and age, God doesn't need validation by posting photos on God's Facebook feed. God wouldn't have had the bumper sticker saying, quote, my student made honor roll at such and such a high school. Honestly, if God had a bumper sticker, I'd like to think it was the one that said, my honor student beat up your honor student. God doesn't act like God is smarter than anybody else. Instead, what this psalm reminds us, this psalm that we read each and every Shabbat, is that God spends God's time in inspired silence, helping those who are downtrodden to raise them up. And all of us in this room should be doing that too. As we read the psalm for Shabbat each week, I hope that we will recognize that this is our calling, this is our role on earth. God doesn't want us to spend our time overconfident in our abilities, but helping to aid others who do not have the self-confidence themselves. Magbia shifalim, to lift up those who need help. Everyone in this room knows what a better Casey would have done. Casey would not have let those first two pitches go by. He would have at least tried to swing at them because he would have known he was part of an entire team, the human team, that was relying on him to do his best. That team deserved nothing less in that moment, and so too it is with us. With everyone on this earth, we are all on the same team. We all have to work to build a better earth together. Ish ba'ar lo yeda uchsil lo yavin etzot. Each week on Shabbat, we remember that this is a lesson that the arrogant and foolish will never understand. But it is something that if we in this room, if we wish for there to be joy in Mudville, must never forget. Shabbat Shalom.